Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're tackling something I find absolutely fascinating, the wealth paradox. Why is it that some nations just stay poor while others seem to flourish, generation after generation? It's honestly one of the most persistent mysteries in global economics. Why exactly is there such a massive gap between the richest and poorest corners of our world? Well, we're going to break down the actual mechanics of wealth and poverty today, and we'll look at them not just as isolated, random events, but as deeply, deeply connected systems.
So let's jump right into the big question. Why do some countries just stay poor forever? Is it just terrible luck? Maybe the lingering shadow of colonial history? Or, the devastating aftermath of a war? We all kind of want to look for that single villain, right? Or one specific historical event to explain why a nation struggles. But as we're going to see, the reality of global economics is way more complex and honestly way more interesting than just a simple cause and effect storyline. And this brings us to a really incredible paradox. On one hand, you have nations like Singapore and Switzerland. These are places with virtually zero natural resources, yet they are insanely wealthy. But then, on the flip side, you've got nations sitting literally on top of mountains of gold, diamonds, and vast oceans of oil, and yet their populations remain trapped in poverty. Seriously, how does an island with almost nothing to mine or drill outpace nations holding the world's most valuable physical assets?
Well, the crucial thing to understand here is that nations don't stay poor for just one single reason. Poverty isn't merely a lack of cash. It's this compounding, reinforcing cycle. It's multiple problems interlocking and feeding off each other, creating an inescapable trap. Think of it kind of like a giant tangled knot. You can't just pull on one string and expect the whole thing to untie, right? You really have to understand how all those strings are woven together to figure out why some economies just completely stall out. Okay, moving right along to Section 1. The trap. Deconstructing the cycle of poverty. Let's see how this knot is actually tied.
Now, poverty actually goes way deeper than just income. I think when a lot of us picture poor nations, we immediately think of low wages. But the true deficits? We're talking about a lack of education, failing healthcare, crumbling infrastructure, missing institutions, zero access to modern technology, and just a total lack of opportunity. A country could literally have millions of the hardest working people on the planet. But without these foundational systems in place, those hardworking folks simply cannot generate sustained economic growth. Wealth is built on top of systems. When those systems are missing, the opportunity just vanishes.
And this brings us to a really fascinating economic concept that explains our initial paradox perfectly. It's called the resource curse. Basically, having vast oil or mineral wealth can actually backfire on a country. When an entire economy relies on just pulling one single thing out of the ground, they become incredibly vulnerable. If global prices for that resource fall, their entire revenue collapses overnight. Plus, because all the focus and money goes toward that one resource, other domestic industries like manufacturing or tech get completely neglected, innovation stalls out. And because all this enormous wealth is concentrated in one place, it creates the perfect breeding ground for our next major hurdle.
Let's actually map out how corruption acts as this compounding barrier to development. Because it isn't just a moral failing, guys. It is a structural economic disaster. Step 1. Public money is stolen or misused. Because of that, Step 2 happens. Roads don't get built, schools stay underfunded, and hospitals just fall apart. Then, in Step 3, foreign investors look at all these failing systems and, understandably, they lose confidence and take their money elsewhere. And finally, Step 4. Overall economic growth completely grinds to a halt. It's literally a devastating domino effect.
There's a really crucial truth to highlight here. Corruption doesn't just waste money, it destroys trust. And trust is perhaps the single most valuable, intangible asset any economy can possibly have. Think about it. An economy is really just a massive network of human interactions. If you don't trust that a contract's going to be honored, or that your business won't be suddenly seized, or even that the roads are safe enough to transport your goods, well, you're not going to participate. You won't invest. When trust evaporates, the entire economy paralyzes.
Which naturally leads us to the antidote for that paralysis: strong institutions. We're talking about independent courts, reliable property rights, transparent regulations, fair taxation, and predictable laws. Without these robust institutions there to protect property and actually enforce contracts, entrepreneurs simply won't take risks. Ask yourself, why would you spend 10 years of your life building a business if there aren't predictable laws in place to protect it? Economic activity absolutely demands certainty, and these institutions are the bedrock that make that certainty possible.
Adding fuel to the fire, though, is conflict.
War and unpredictable political instability destroy the stability that businesses need, the confidence investors require, and the security that families rely on. Businesses have to have stability to project their costs. Investors need confidence to park their capital somewhere for 5, 10, or even 20 years. And families, they need security to invest in their kids' futures. When conflict erupts, all of that gets wiped out. And honestly, even after a war ends, rebuilding that fundamental confidence can take decades.
All right, let's pivot to Section 2, the blueprint, building true prosperity. Let's look at how countries actually get out of this trap.
Here's a thought I absolutely love. Natural resources eventually run out. Knowledge doesn't. This is a powerful reality check because it shifts our focus entirely away from the physical stuff in the ground and onto the value of human capital. Think about it. A diamond mine is eventually going to be emptied out. An oil well will run dry. But the collective knowledge, the innovation, and the problem-solving capacity of a well-educated population, that only grows over time.
So what does investing in human capital actually look like in the real world? Well, education is widely considered the absolute most vital long-term investment a nation can make. When a country focuses on creating a productive workforce, we're talking better engineers, skilled doctors, innovative scientists, forward-thinking entrepreneurs, and dedicated teachers. They are building a wealth engine that literally cannot be depleted. Innovation starts by empowering people with knowledge. And that right there is exactly how a country with zero natural resources outpaces one swimming in oil.
And this human capital directly fuels our next core pillar, the engine of global trade. You see, no country grows in complete isolation. By integrating into international markets, a nation can specialize in very specific industries. They export those specialized products, they import advanced technology from others, and they get access to massively larger markets, which creates jobs. Engaging in these global trade networks is exactly the playbook today's richest economies use to sustain their massive growth.
Now, looking at this impartially and strictly as an economic pattern, we have to talk about leadership and policy. Governments that prioritize consistent, long-term planning drastically outperform those driven by short-term political decisions. Short-term decisions often chase immediate popularity, right? But they create long-term unpredictability, which scares away investment and totally hinders growth. Long-term planning, on the other hand, creates those stable, predictable conditions where businesses can actually safely plant roots and thrive over decades.
Moving on to Section 3, breaking the cycle, the proof of change. So is it actually possible to pull this off? History gives us a resounding yes. Take South Korea, once among the absolute poorest nations on Earth, and now a global technological powerhouse. Singapore succeeded wildly despite having basically no natural resources. Vietnam rebuilt itself from total devastation through strategic, vital economic reforms. And Rwanda has dramatically reduced poverty through steady, disciplined development. These nations are living proof that poverty is not a permanent state. Change is entirely possible if you have the right blueprint.
Let's pull this all together and summarize what we've covered today. The compounding traps of poverty are systematically countered by the foundations of true prosperity over time. Weak institutions and corruption, those get defeated by strong governance and predictable laws. Conflict and political instability are cured by patience, discipline, and security. And perhaps most importantly, resource dependence is replaced by human capital and innovation. True prosperity definitely doesn't happen overnight. It is built slowly and deliberately over decades. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder today, based on everything we've just unpacked. When you look at the incredibly complex web of global economics, the resource curse, the domino effect of corruption, the undeniable value of human capital, and the power of strong institutions, what do you think is the ultimate anchor? What is the single biggest reason some countries remain poor for generations? The answer you land on really reshapes how we view the world, our policies, and our collective future. Thanks so much for exploring this deeply fascinating topic with me. Keep questioning, keep learning, and as always, keep focusing on the deeper systems that drive our world.